post my Oldsmobile on this channel because I do a few things to it here and there. And today's going to be one of those days. Love my Oldsmobile. I've had this thing since '06. I think I put maybe 25,000 miles on it since I bought it. And but there for a short time it was my daily driver. I used to drive it one way from Wichita, Kansas to Salina not every day, but you know, a couple times a month, because that's where I worked. But as you know, old cars, they do start needing maintenance. Well, any car needs maintenance, but there's a lot of things on these cars that, as they get older, you have to be mindful of. And like any car, especially today, the catalyst system is no exception. Now, this car is an oil burner. I mean, it's 45 years old. The car burns a little oil. So, like with anything, where does the oil go? Well, the oil goes into the exhaust. I don't care whether it's a brand new car or a 45-year-old car. Your catalyst system is not going to take care of oil. It's going to plug it up. And that's what we got going on here. Like with these old Chevys or these old GM products, they have a tendency to you know, the catalytic converters were never a great thing. I know it's starting to plug up because I can feel the heat through the floor right there. That's kind of why those mats are there. So today, we're going to drive this thing around, and I'm going to show you the ins and outs of some of the things I'm dealing with, and then we're going to go home and remedy it. I love hearing the secondaries open up. I don't, however, enjoy hearing the belt squeak. That's something I've been dealing with since I bought the car. But this car has the infamous Rochester Quadrajet. And say what you will, it's probably one of the finest carburetors ever produced. However, no, I can hear y'all. No, that's a pile of junk. No, you heard it was a pile of junk. If you ever have one of these things that's tuned properly, or a rebuild by a guy who actually knows how to rebuild one, and these are very temperamental. That's why everybody hates them. They're very temperamental carburetor. People like Holleys because Holleys are easy. They're easy. You just on, off, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And I've never been much of a Holley fan. I've been always more of an Edelbrock guy, but Holley makes a good carburetor. But for street use, like I said, I prefer a Quadrajet. And if you get them set the way they're supposed to be, and setting the carburetor is part of routine maintenance, and in these cars, the emission system, you get them all set up properly like they're supposed to be, these will be the finest carburetors you ever use. You're not going to get your skirt blown up with them, but they'll do everything you ever wanted to do. That's why they use them for so many years, because they really are a good carburetor. Never ceases to happen. I take the car out and it starts raining on me. It also does something else. Die already, you. Yep. That'd be funny to run this car through Charlie's. They made me sign a waiver. Start leaking everywhere. Yeah, windshield's leaking. That's leaking. Everything's leaking. Truthfully, the only reason I did this was because I wanted the undercarriage wash, and I need to use the vacuum. I'm going to clean this thing up. Well, we made it home. But one of the unfortunate side effects of having a clogged catalyst system on cars like this is that it actually makes them run a lot hotter. This car runs really hot. And by the way, if you got a car that's in this kind of condition, don't run it through an automatic wash. No, it wasn't pretty. But it did clean it up, and what I really wanted was the undercarriage spray. And I wanted to use the vacuum, so I think it was worth it for what I wanted to do. But loose plastics and stuff like that, especially old stuff, will get blown off. Case in point, these right here were already starting to peel up, but the undercarriage wash pretty much took the little plastic pieces right off. Those were missing on both sides, and it took that one clean off. It was coming up, but doesn't mean I wanted it gone. Things of that nature are why they want you to sign a waiver. So I'm going to jack this thing up. We're going to go under and we're going to look at the catalytic converter and see what it's going to take to get it off. I already know that this is going to be part of it. I'm actually starting to have some second thoughts about this. Yeah, let me show you. This has never been off the car since it was new. I just discovered that. It's gonna have to get cut here. It's got bolts here holding it in. It's got these bolts here. Now I've redone all this from back here, but this converter is shot, and this is one of those deals to where you really have to decide, is this something you want to take on? Because I mean, look, there's oil everywhere. It's, yeah, and I'll explain about all that. I'm not gonna lie, I really hadn't looked at it that hard. I don't drive this much, not as much as I used to, but I do know the catalytic converter's clogging. Now, I know I said I was going to take it off and clean it and all that, but when you look at it, you realize this is one of those things to where you really have to have the proper tools to do it. And I can get the gist of it off, but am I going to be able to put it back together and put it back together properly? I don't have the tools to fix that. And this would probably run me about $500 or $600, depending, to have it all done back up right. I don't know how much the catalytic converter costs. It could cost me $1,000. But this is one of those things. I think I'm going to put it on pause for a minute, and let's just jump on the carburetor and I'll show you what's going on there. Now, I don't know if you can hear it, but you can actually hear gasoline boiling in here. And that is from excessive heat. One of the main problems people have with carburetors is that when they are replacing them, they buy them from the big box stores, they buy them from the chains, they buy them from cheap people that send them, you know, to be internationally rebuilt someplace else, and you don't get good carburetors like that. This carburetor right here was rebuilt by a guy in Chicago, one of the last old school guys to do it. He gets maybe 4 out of 50 that were bad. He's retired now. This is one of his last ones. I can't get another one from him. He gets maybe 4 out of 50 that are bad. The ones at AutoZone or O'Reilly's or the big chain stores, they're mass produced, you know, mass rebuilt. You get maybe 6 out of 10 are bad. Between 4 out of 10 to 6 out of 10. You just basically have to keep changing them until you hit a good one, or take it out and rebuild it again yourself. And that's not why you bought the carburetor to begin with. So that's part of the problem that we have with rebuilt carburetors, why people don't like them, especially the quadrajets, because quadrajets, like I said, are very temperamental. And it's a skilled trade. You have to know how to rebuild a quadrajet. You can rebuild an Edelbrock or a Holly in about 10 minutes. These take a little more time, but trust me, if you learn the nuances of these Rochesters, you'll fall in love with them. Trust me on that. You'll fall in love with them. We need to peer down in here and see if the butterflies are closed completely. If you can peer down in there, you can see that they're closed completely. So let's check the ones in here now. I'm too short. I've always had problem with the accelerator pump and all that, but a lot of it is vapor lock. This car gets hot enough, and especially in the summertime, it'll vapor lock up really quick, just due to heat. It's nice to drive around in the winter, except the fact it doesn't have a heater. That was leaking, so I bypassed it. But on the carburetor here, we have a bad accelerator pump, or accelerator pump starting to go bad. Now, I've often thought of replacing this Quadrajet with a Edelbrock. A 600 would be more than enough. But it doesn't solve the problem. The problem is the catalyst, which makes the engine run too hot, which throws the timing off, it throws everything off. So I can sit there and readjust everything, but it doesn't solve the core problem because it's just going to get worse. And that's kind of where we're at with this. I know I've got a loose mount again, but if you saw the oil underneath the car, that creates another problem. Now what I have here is some motor mounts for an Oldsmobile. And I'll show you what problems they create. These are basically made from steel that's been more or less bonded to metal. Metal frame, steel, kind of supposed to absorb. It's all, what's that word, vulcanized together, I guess, I don't know. And it's made from the finest qualities India can provide. At least it's not Chinesium this time. I don't know what's better. But when these things get coated, in fact, this is bolts to the engine, this bolts to the frame. When these things get coated and completely saturated, they create a lot more flex because they're saturated. They've actually gotten bigger. And then they just disintegrate. It's amazing that something that's made from a petroleum byproduct like oil can't handle being soaked in oil. Go figure. But what ends up happening is they eventually just break. And the passenger side motor mount, when I throw it in reverse, I can see it starting to get loose. It's not broken, it's not flopping, but it's coming up a little higher and being a little more aggressive than it should. And that tells me it's on the way out. Now, here's the problem I'm dealing with. If the car was a daily driver, this would not even be a question. We would have this thing up, going, fixed. I would spend the money because it's worth spending the money, and I really do like the car. It needs a lot of work. But lately I've been contemplating what I want to do with it. Now, I don't want to sell it. I could sell it. It's worth a couple grand, easily. I could have it sold in a week or two, depending on how I market it. But what do I want to ultimately do with it? And truthfully, in order to fix all that oil, there's no point in doing a whole lot of work to it other than just keeping it going efficiently until we address the oil leak. And the problem is that the engine has to come out. To fix these leaks, like the intake manifold, would be easy. But it's not just the intake manifold. While the intake manifold is the biggest leak, I'm not even going to lie about that. You know, we don't know what else is leaking down there. Is the front main leaking? I know the rear main isn't. Of course, how could I tell? Because of all the oil it leaks. But, you know, all that aside, the pan's leaking, if everything's leaking, the whole engine has to come out. Now, this is the dilemma that car guys have. Especially when you have a car that you love and you really don't want to restore it, but you do want to keep it up. I mean, yeah, restoration would be nice, but it's your car, you're comfortable. I would like to do the interior. I'm not even gonna lie about that. But the engine has to come out. Do you want that same engine back in? Because if it's going to come out, you might as well have it all completely done. But for what it costs to redo it, could you put in something modern? Do you want to put in something modern? And that's kind of where I'm at. one of the problems that I'm having, because it's so hot, it's very evident on the passenger side floor pan. Floor pan is not rusting because there was a leak. It's rusting because of the catalytic converter. That's the catalytic converter right here. These A bodies all do this. What happens is you get a lot of dirt and debris and stuff built up on top of your catalytic converter, and it just bakes it and holds it in. Well, dirt and debris hold moisture, so all it does is just destroy your floor pan. I actually have a new floor pan in the garage, but I need to figure out what I'm doing with the rest of it here. So I've contemplated putting a modern engine in that. No, please don't get angry with me. Maybe like an LS1, just something mild. Just something, I'm not out to win over the hearts and minds and I just want something that'll cruise nice. Just leave the automatic transmission in it, put the LS1 in it, and just be able to enjoy the car. And, you know, get the air conditioning working and stuff back in it, have a working heater again. But then, you know, you're talking real money. And this is the dilemma that all car guys have. You get a driveway full of cars and you don't know which one to work on. But also, it's just the mere cost of it. So rebuilding the antique engine, 45-year-old engine, versus dropping in a new LS1. I don't know what they're costing right now. I could probably look it up. But then plus the hardware, plus the standalone, and that's all easy stuff. You can have it done in a weekend if you have all the stuff. But you know, how much is that car worth to you, and how much money are you willing to put into it? But more importantly, that's secondary. What is your ultimate goal with that car? And that's kind of where I'm at right now, is where is my ultimate goal with this car? I really don't want to sell it, but at the same time, I'm really thinking about getting it to a point where I can really have some fun with it, where I can take it on trips, to where I can cruise in it, to where it's not a complete oily, messy pain. This has become an after dark car. So you might be asking, what is an after dark car? Well, in this Oldsmobile, it gets so hot during the day, even with the windows open. These cars were designed to be driven with the windows down, so the wind doesn't rush through them like a new car. New cars are designed to be driven with the AC, the climate control on. They're not designed to be driven with the windows down. It's horrible in a new car with the windows down. On this car, it's great. Even with the big cabin open, like I used to smoking, I can just flip the cigarette ashes and it right out the window. It doesn't come back in like on a new car. The air is designed to go around the openings. And so that's nice, but consequently, it doesn't really lend much to cabin ventilation. And trust me, that gets hot. In fact, Red can't put her purse on the floor because if there's anything like chapstick or any kind of things in there, it'll melt it. It gets really hot on that side of the floor. And we've just come to the point where we have to do something. And this is where a lot of car guys are. I only drive this thing after dark just because it's cooler. And I can get a good breeze through the car. And I miss wing windows, and you know, it's less chance of it overheating and all that. And it's more of an enjoyable ride, you know, about midnight, 1 in the morning. Because during the day, especially on the hottest summer's day, I won't drive this. I just leave it because it's just too hot. It gets really hot. And as a car guy, you wonder why I haven't started any of it yet. The problem is that most car guys know you need to have everything or you end up with case in point. The only reason I tore the Torino apart, it had a bad cam bearing, but it was running, was because I thought I had all the pieces and the new engine to have it going that weekend. That's really what I want to do. I don't like dormant cars, and this is driving me nuts. I just haven't had time to work on it. But this is what you end up as a car guy when you're trying to balance projects. You don't want these things sitting around for months and weeks and years because life gets in the way. So that's why I haven't started on that, because I don't want it sitting around forever and ever and ever. You know, the Torino has been sitting around a long time. It's still tagged and insured and all that, but the problem right now is in the distributor right down there. It's not pumping oil, so we're not sure what we have to do there. I need to pull the distributor back out. But all that aside, I mean, this thing just sitting here. Tire went flat, which sucks. You know, it's got all the goodies. You know, it's a great car. Well, it was. It's been tagged and insured for 3 years and hasn't driven a mile. That's a problem. So this is what car guys are trying to avoid for the most part. But as you saw with that, that's a special case. It's a whole chain reaction of events. If I solve one problem, I'm going to fix about 3 more. But it doesn't make it worth, like I said, to fix those 3 problems to have to go through and fix them again because I didn't solve the main problem. And that's kind of where we're at right now, because truthfully, I really need to figure out what I'm doing with this. I would love to take that on Power Tour next year, or even the Torino, but in the Wichita area, there's just really no one I trust anymore to work on cars. The guys I used to go to 20 years ago, they're gone. So now I'm trying to figure out a good reputable place who can do the car. And I mean, I'm willing to pay. It's just there's nobody to spend my money on. And there's not a lot of people that I trust with my stuff. That's just me. You know, it may not look like it, but I've spent a lot of money on that Oldsmobile. Spent a lot of money on that Oldsmobile. Spent a lot on this car. I've already spent, you know, close to $4,500 in just body work, and yeah, I've got NOS bumpers in the corner, and I've got new parts everywhere. I've got, you know, I've collected all the parts. Now I need to put them all together. But so where do we go from here? Well, I guess as a car guy, that's what you have to decide for yourself. How far are you willing to go? If you just want to enjoy it till it dies and not fix it, it's all right. Send it to somebody who will love it. But if you want to fix it and you enjoy the car and all that, there's nothing wrong with that either. It's just one thing that makes me the maddest when somebody says the car's too far gone. Nothing's too far gone. You know, well, the majority of these cars, let me take that back. The majority of these cars that people have said are too far gone have not been gone that far. They just don't want to sell them. Or they just want to scalp you for a price, or they think they can make more selling the pieces. And more often than not on the latter is it just ends up rusting in a field. When there was a dozen guys who would have bought the car and loved it and put it back on the road. Putting old cars back on the road. That's the ultimate form of recycling. Because you're not putting another car back on the road. You're not using the resources to build another car. You're taking something existing that the technology's been paid for, and you're putting it back on the road. And truthfully, when that thing was running good, we were getting very, very good mileage. And that's another conspiracy I'm not going to get into. But so where do I go from here? Well, I've got some hard decisions to make. These are old car problems, so I guess we'll put this away for now. I really was going to do the exhaust, and I got looking at it, and I was like, oh no. This is going to take more tools than people with torches, and I don't have any of that stuff here. Maybe someday. But old car problems are real, and you just have to figure out how far are you willing to go with your old car. Because to keep these things up and running takes money. And it takes real money. And it's worth it, but you have to decide whether it's worth it to you. So, I guess that's it for now. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all later.